Local news, national news, even feel-good news, delivering the topics that are relevant to you.
That's why I listen to Joe. He covers it all.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO.
We have so much to talk about tonight. I am so glad you're joining me here on the Joe Kelley Show on WDBO, weeknights, weekday afternoons, 5 till 7 p.m. We've got a lot to talk about. One of the things I'm just fascinated, really intrigued by, are you one of those people that when you step outside, you ever step outside here in Florida and you've been inside all day, right, in a dark office or whatever, and then you step outside and as soon as you get into the sun, you start sneezing? Has that ever happened to you? Did you know that that's a thing and that's actually a medically diagnosed thing? I can't wait to tell you about that. More of Elon Musk's Starlink internet satellites are falling out of orbit. Honestly, so many are falling out of orbit that he's got to launch more rockets just to make up for all the ones that keep falling out of orbit and burning up in the atmosphere. So hang on. We'll have that for you coming up in a few minutes as well. First, I wanted to give everybody if you don't mind, if I can, we're going to break it down here. I'm going to get personal with everybody. Okay, I'm just get personal with everybody. I want to give everybody a health update, my health. So in case you don't know, I was out for a few days at the end of August because I kept having fluid build up in my lung. In my left lung, fluid kept building up. And I would go to the hospital and then they would drain. At one point, they drained 1.8 liters of gooey fluid from my left lung. Now, if you think about that in terms of a 2-liter bottle of soda, that is darn near a 2-liter bottle of soda. Imagine that in my chest. For those of you who have ever seen me or know me, you know that there's not enough room in my chest for a 2-liter bottle of soda. I am a bean pole. Okay, I am 6'2", and I am like 165 pounds. I mean, I am tall and skinny. I am a skeleton wrapped with skin. That's about it. And so there wasn't a whole lot of room in my chest to have a 2-liter bottle of soda. So I went in for a minor surgical procedure. They called it a VAT, video-assisted thoracoscopy. And in the video-assisted thoracoscopy, they did something. I'm not entirely sure the exact details. I was asleep for most of the surgery. Nope, all of the surgery. But then they put in a tube after they fixed the problem, and they said that they used a glue or an irritant to help. It's getting into the weeds too deep. Suffice to say, they fixed the problem, and I am no longer having fluid buildup. But they left a tube in me just in case that it didn't work, that it didn't take, and once a week I would drain the tube, and unlike the 1.8 liters that came out, in the 3 times since the surgery at the end of August, I've drained it 3 times, and each time it was somewhere between a teaspoon and a tablespoon of fluid that came out. It just wasn't much. I mean, it was negligible. It just didn't matter how much came out at that point because it just wasn't much. I mean, it would be, I could spit that much. I mean, it was very, very small amount. So I went to the doctor last week, and he said, let's wait 1 more week before we take the tube out. And so they had me go get an X-ray yesterday, and then I went to the thoracic doctor again today, and we compared the X-rays from before the VAT and after the VAT, the X-ray I got yesterday, and there was a huge difference. Boy, I'm not a doctor, and I'm pretty good at looking at an X-ray. I think most of us are pretty good at figuring things out. And boy, it was night and day looking at the X-rays on my left lung, and it is so much more clear now than it was back then. And so then the doctor said, let's go ahead and take that tube out. And let's see, how do I describe this as how they took the tube out? So the tube was in the front of my chest, right? But it actually went under my skin and then went behind my back, between my ribs, and then into my lung. So this was a long tube that went in. And I think the best way to describe how they pulled it out, You know when you're trying to start your lawnmower after it's been sitting all winter long? That's it. They just rip that thing right out. And so they pulled the tube out, and it's no longer in there. So I'm pretty excited. I do have a gauze pad and a gauze pad. Is that the right word? Why does that sound funny in my head? I have a gauze pad and some Tagaderm on it, and that's it. But the tube is now gone, so I am well on the rebound, and I am good for another 100,000 miles or so. They put me up on the lift. They checked my lube and the spark plugs, and everything seems to be just fine. So that's my health update. Everything is great. I got the tube out, and now we'll just move on. Now, this leads me to topic number 1 for this afternoon. When I had to go to ORMC to get this done, and I had to park in their parking garage. And man, that's a hell of a thing, parking in the parking garage at ORMC. And I was up on the 5th floor. Finally found a parking space on the 5th floor. Then this was at 8:15 this morning, and I had to go all the way up to the 5th floor to find a parking space. I get into the elevator, and there's already a woman in the elevator. In fact, there were several people in the elevator, and I hear a conversation. Right as the door opens, I hear this conversation in the elevator, and I step inside, and I realize that there is a woman. She's in scrubs, perhaps a nurse, maybe a medical tech. I don't know. She could have been a doctor. I have no idea. She seemed a little young to be a doctor, but she is on the phone in the elevator. And more than that, she's on the speakerphone in the elevator. Now, I don't know when or how this became acceptable behavior. Now, by the context of the conversation, and I could hear both sides of the conversation, here is my interpretation of what was happening. Here is what was happening. The woman in the elevator was talking to what I suspect is her father, and she was having a discussion with her father about whether or not she needed to put antifreeze in her radiator in her car. And this conversation went on and on and on and on. And there were 5 or 6 of us at this point in the elevator, and she's going on and on and on. I will say I was a little impressed that she didn't lose the call in the elevator. I thought for sure the call would cut out in the elevator, but it didn't. And she just talks, and there's, like I said, there's 5 or 6 of us in the elevator. I do not understand. I will never understand. First and foremost, I'm with the millennials on this one. I hate talking on the phone in any way, shape, or form. I hate it. Hate it, hate it, hate it. If you call me, other than, here at the radio station, obviously, if you call into the show, I'm taking your call. That's how that works. But if you call me on my cell phone, I mean, there are times I won't pick up even when it's my mom calling. I mean, and certainly if the caller ID doesn't indicate who it is, I don't answer phone calls. I don't answer cold calls that I don't know who it is. And even if I do know who it is, more times than not, I don't take the call. I hate talking on the phone. I hate it. My wife, my sweet, loving wife, Ronnie Sue, she's on the phone all day long as part of her work. And I don't know how she does it because I am phone phobic. I hate it. I don't mind texting. We can text all day. I'll have long texting conversations, but I don't want to talk on the phone. But beyond that, how in the world is it acceptable in public for people to be on their speakerphone? It's one thing when if someone's listening to music on their speakerphone. It's another altogether if you're on a phone call, for Pete's sake. I can't tell you how many times I have overheard people arguing with their spouse, arguing with their kids, and frankly, at my last residence when I lived downtown, people doing drug deals on their speakerphone. When you buy a phone, it literally comes with headphones. There is no excuse to be on a speakerphone. I'm curious, what do you do if you're like me and you're annoyed by that? And I'm going to go ahead and assume that you are annoyed by that. Unless you're one of the people who does that. All right, so there's 2 types of people. people who talk on speakerphone in public and all of the rest of us who hate you. Okay? I mean, that's pretty much how this is going to work out. So when you come across somebody who is talking on their phone in public like that, do you ever engage them? Do you ever say, hey, man, just take it off speakerphone and talk like a real phone? You put it up against your ear and talk like it's a real phone. Do that instead. 844-580-WDBO. It's 844-580-9326. I did ask that question on my Facebook page, and Daryl had commented that he said what you ought to do is just engage in the conversation and start right away. So so then at that point my thought is, no, you don't want to be using antifreeze. This is Florida. You don't need antifreeze in Florida. Just put water in there. You'll be fine with water. Dad, what are you talking about? Come on, man. What do you guys think? You can use the open mic in the WDBO app, or you can call, and I'll talk on the phone. I don't mind talking on the phone when I'm on the air. I just don't want to talk on the phone when I'm not on the air. 844-580-WDBO. It's 844-580-9326. Also, today I had a little bit of a break, and I went outside and I flew my drone, and we have a little tower here at the radio station. We've got 5 radio stations in the building, and we've got some really big towers that are spread out across Central Florida. But here at the radio station, we have kind of a smaller tower. And I saw a bird perched way up on the tower, and I thought, I think I'll fly my drone up. We've got an osprey up in the tower. And I flew my drone up, and I flew it around a few times, and I got relatively close to the osprey. I didn't know. I don't want to. You're not supposed to disturb wildlife. It doesn't matter what it is, but you're not supposed to disturb wildlife. So I didn't want to get too close, and I zoomed in on it so it looks closer than it is. But it wasn't until I started editing the video when I realized, oh, my goodness, that was not an osprey. It was a bald eagle. There was a bald eagle up on our tower this afternoon. So if you want to see the video, I think the video was pretty cool, but maybe you'll think otherwise. But if you want to check it out, it's on the WDBO Facebook page. It's also on the Joe Kelley Facebook page if you want to see that. 844-580-WDBO. It's 844-580-9326. You can use the open mic in the WDBO app. Coming up next, we're going to have all the stories that you missed while you were at the office today, while you're working, all the stories that you missed. And it was a busy news day today. It continues to be a busy news day. We'll have it all for you coming up next. Stay with us right here on WDBO.
This is WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's news and talk.
Glad you're feeling better, Joe. Good to have a balanced voice on the radio.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that more than you know.
Yeah, Joe, I'm glad everything went okay. I'm glad the tube's out. You know, every once in a while, a man's got to go in for a lube and tube.
Yes, I that's exactly right, yes.
A medical professional using their speakerphone within a hospital like that in an elevator can pick up a bunch of extraneous voices and communications. It possibly is either an actual violation of HIPAA or could be construed as such.
And I totally, I think it's a valid point, though I will say that in this particular case, as I said, the conversation was about her automobile and whether or not she needed to put antifreeze in her radiator, and that was really pretty much all she discussed. It's the Joe Kelley Show. If you're just joining us, here are the stories that you missed while you're at work today. I actually heard this one this morning as I was listening to Orlando's Morning News with Scott Inez. Actor Michael Gambon, known to many for his portrayal of Hogwarts headmaster Dumbledore in 6 of the 8 Harry Potter films, died. He's 82 years old. 6 hours ago, the Washington Post reported that the U.S. government has started notifying federal workers that a shutdown appears imminent as the Biden administration embarks on the formal, methodical process of preparing much of Washington to come to a halt. 4 hours ago, NBC News reported that, and this is a weird one, a man arrested in the killing of a Baltimore CEO was suspected of raping a woman days before and was already under surveillance. 4 hours ago, CNN reported that multiple people have been killed in 2 shooting incidents in Rotterdam. That, according to the Dutch police, a 32-year-old suspect has been arrested. 4 hours ago, the Senate votes to advance government funding measure with time running out. That was in the Hill. 3 hours ago, the Associated Press reported that California fast food workers will be paid at least $20 an hour next year under a new law signed by Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom. And before anybody goes nutty butters thinking people that flip burgers aren't worth $20 an hour, California, the cost of living is so ridiculously high, A, and B, good for them. I'm glad they're going to get $20 an hour. I think that's fantastic. The rising tide lifts all boats. 2 hours ago, Bloomberg reported that Tesla is being sued by the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, which alleges that it created a hostile work environment for racial minorities at its California factory. 1 hour ago, an appeals court rejects Donald Trump's bid to delay a civil trial in a lawsuit brought by New York's Attorney General, allowing the case to start Monday as scheduled. Donald Trump is going to be on trial starting Monday, as in the day after this weekend. That is going to make for an interesting political campaign. And just 41 minutes ago, finally, ABC News reported that the House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer announced that he will issue subpoenas for bank records for Hunter Biden and James Biden as part of the House GOP impeachment inquiry into President Biden. We got a little bit, the star witness, if you will, Jonathan Turley, had this as part of his opening statement today.
And then it was just 3 years ago that another impeachment occurred without any hearings at all. The shortening intervals between impeachments should be a cause of concern and circumspection for all the members on both sides. And I want to emphasize what it is that we're here today for. This is a question of an impeachment inquiry. It is not a vote on articles of impeachment. In fact, I do not believe that the current evidence would support articles of impeachment. That is something that an inquiry has to establish. But I also do believe that the House has passed the threshold for an impeachment inquiry into the conduct of President Biden.
So that was not, I mean, if that's the Republican star witness, Jonathan Turley, that was not the opening statement, certainly, that the Republicans were hoping for by saying that that at this point, the evidence he has seen, they don't have the grounds for an impeachment. So your thoughts on that at 844-580-WDBO. It's 844-580-9326. We also are talking about these obnoxious people that talk on their phone in a speakerphone in public settings.
When people are talking on speakerphone out in middle public, I just start doing the same and talking really loud so they can't hear either, and so they know how annoying it is.
But do they? I mean, I feel like they just don't get it. They don't understand how obnoxious that is to have their phone on speakerphone while they're talking in public. Coming up next here, a couple of interesting polls out now. One indicates that Biden tops Donald Trump by 5 points in a new survey. This as 79% of Iowa Republicans say they would vote for a candidate other than Donald Trump. 79% of Iowa Republicans. Oh, my goodness. We're going to get into that for you. Coming up next, stay right here on The Joe Kelley Show.
This is WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's news and talk. News, weather, traffic, all the things you want on your drive home. Plus, Joe Kelley being, well, Joe Kelley. Now, The Joe Kelley Show on Orlando's news and talk, WDBO.
Oh, watch out, Joe. I hope you got your 107 license to fly that drone, because you do know that they passed laws now that you can't just go out and fly drones anymore.
I'm well aware of that, and I do have my FAA Part 107 license. I am a license. Didn't we just have this discussion last night? We just did, right? I think that was on the promo even. So, yeah, we just had that discussion last night. And yes, I do have, if you're watching right now on the video stream in our chat room, that's my FAA license. I have a FCC license. I have an FAA license. I have a CCW license. I have a lot of licenses. So I'm all licensed up, and I fly my drones legally and legally only. At least that is always my effort to make sure that I'm flying them legally. All right, we've got a couple of things here we've been talking about. We've been talking about people who use their speakerphone in public.
Bill here. Yeah, my wife talks on the speakerphone all the time. Drives me crazy. I don't know what to do.
Yeah. I would have to sit down and have a discussion with her and say, okay, we got issues. Let's talk about the presidential primary here real quick. You guys, I'm sure, probably watched a little bit of the debate last night. I won't lie to you. I didn't watch the whole thing. I tuned in a little bit late, and my blood boiled so quickly. I got so frustrated so quickly watching that, and it's chaos. It's not that I object to the people. It's not that I object to the policy discussions. I wholly object to the format. I wholly object to each of the candidates trying to one-up everybody. I wholly object to the candidates talking over one another, shouting at one another, and some of the petty, stupid questions that were asked by Fox News. Frankly, I think Fox News has done a terrible job with the first two debates in moderating these debates. And what in the world was that woman from Univision doing in the debate last night? That woman from Univision, I don't know if you know this, she actually was one of the moderators of the Democratic presidential debate during the last presidential cycle. I mean, she was asking questions straight out of the leftist handbook. She had no business being a part of the debate last night. And you know, beyond that, her accent was so thick, it was difficult to understand her at times. But that was just, that was insulting. I mean, if these are Republicans and Republicans get to decide, you know, their own presidential candidate. I've discussed this every night. Republicans pick their own presidential candidate, and they get to pick what channels that they give the rights to broadcast to. If they don't just give them, they sell them. I mean, so Fox News pays to get that debate, and they just did a lousy job. I think they just did a terrible, terrible job. Now, Iowa, of course, as you well know, Iowa is one of the first states that votes in the presidential primary, and this is going to be bad news for Donald Trump because in Iowa, 79% of Iowa Republicans say they would vote for a candidate other than Donald Trump. 79%. So 80%. Basically, of candidates. And here's how it breaks down. 48% say that they are considering Trump and other candidates. 31% say they're absolutely not considering Trump. That's a pretty big number, 31%. And 20% say they're only considering Donald Trump. So if you take the Trump and other candidates and the not considering Trump numbers, add them together, it comes out to 79%. So 79% of Iowa Republicans say they would vote for a candidate other than Donald Trump. So let me throw out this. Let's have an academic discussion about this. Let's say, and as I alluded to here in the last 15, 20 minutes, Donald Trump's one of the trials that Donald Trump is facing begins on Monday. Let's say somehow, some way, Donald Trump is completely excluded from the presidential process moving forward, whether that is through some sort of conviction or, something else happening that Donald Trump isn't a part of the process. Who is your second choice? If not Donald Trump, who is your second choice? So I'm just going to assume everybody's going to say Donald Trump's number one. So let's just get that out of the way. Donald Trump's number one. But who's second for you? I will tell you, in my case, I'm still sticking by Ron DeSantis. I think he has been incredibly lackluster on the campaign trail. He is terrible at retail politics. Terrible. But I like the way he governs. I like the way he leads. So I still like Ron DeSantis. Honestly, I like Nikki Haley. I think Nikki Haley has really, she is really shining in these debates. I think she's doing a good job, as good as anybody can do in these terrible debates. But who is your second choice? 844-580-WDBO. It's 844-580-9326. You can use the open mic in the WDBO app. This as, speaking about polls, and again, I know these are polls. These are polls that don't matter. I mean, what ultimately matters is what happens on Election Day, or as it is now here in America, election month, election quarters, 6 weeks or whatever it is that we have early voting these days. But a new poll indicates that President Biden tops President Trump by 5 points amongst registered voters in a 2024 hypothetical matchup. I don't know that it's going to be a hypothetical matchup. I think it could be the matchup. 45% of registered voters say they would cast their ballots for Biden. 40% said the same for Trump. 7% said other. 4% weren't sure. And 3% say they weren't going to vote. Why would you even participate in a poll on presidential candidates if you don't plan on voting? And why would you not vote? Honestly, I'm pleased. I will never be one of those guys that encourages people to go vote. If people are too apathetic to go vote, or if people are too ignorant to know when the election is or how to vote, I would just as rather those people not vote anyway. They just muck it up for the rest of us. So there's an old gag, an old joke that pops up every election cycle, and it goes something like this. All right, Republicans go vote on Tuesday, and Democrats go vote on Wednesday. We're going to break it down that way. So all Republicans go to the polls on Tuesday, and all Democrats go on Wednesday. And honestly, if you're dumb enough to fall for that, then you're not smart enough to be voting in an American election. All right, so who is your second choice? You can dial it up right now, 844-580-WDBO, or hit me up in the open mic in the WDBO app. In the meantime, we are still getting a lot of comments about people who use their speakerphone on their phone in public settings.
Joe, people that talk on speakerphone in public and have no consideration for others, let's just say they should be publicly flogged. Just my take.
Yeah. And then this is the one that I think really says it all.
What I thoroughly enjoy is when someone walks into a public restroom on their speakerphone. I will flush every toilet, I will turn on every sink, and I will turn on every hand dryer repeatedly until they leave. I'm just a jerk.
I don't know that you are a jerk, to be honest with you. And you know what? Sometimes I walk into the men's room here at the radio station, and in the stall, someone will be on the phone, speaker phone, not even just on the phone. Look, I got to tell you, I don't care where I am, whether I'm at home or if I'm in public. First of all, we've already gone over this. I don't answer the phone, okay? And I certainly am not answering the phone if I'm on the toilet. But I can't tell you how many times I've walked into the bathroom just here at the radio station, and there'll be a man in the stall on speakerphone having a full-on conversation, and I just can't help but to think, does the person you're talking to know what you're doing right now? I mean, just the echo in the room, I feel like they would know that you're sitting on the john, dude. And then I'm the opposite. Like you're saying you're going to flush every toilet and stuff. I'm the opposite. I try to be courteous, which is, I don't know, why should I? If they're not going to be, if they don't care that someone hears they're on the toilet, why would I care? But I always try to like flush quietly if someone's on the phone. I try to wash my hands quietly if I hear somebody on the phone. But that has got to be of disgusting things that humans do. That has got to be one of the absolute most disgusting things that a human does.
It's getting to be ridiculous. Anywhere you go, you're in the grocery store, you're in the department store, clothing store, in my doctor's office, waiting room. These people all got their damn speakerphone on. I don't know what society has become to these days, but I will take your advice. I will engage in that conversation also too as well. Thank you, buddy.
All right, man. It wasn't my advice. It was someone else's advice. But yeah, I get that. And then, and just as bad is people who have their volume up and they're playing games on their phones. You know, you're sitting in a doctor's office lobby or the dentist's office lobby or whatever, and you hear and I'm thinking, do you not hear that? Do you not understand that there are earbuds, there are headphones that you can wear for that kind of stuff? 844-580-WDBO. Steve is joining us in Leesburg. You're on the Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. Hi, Steve. Go ahead, Steve.
Hello?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, hey. Hey, I totally agree with you about the talking on a speakerphone. For years, I've always used your phone like a phone, right?
Yeah.
But so about a year ago, I broke down and finally had to get hearing aids. Well, come to find out, they're Bluetooth. So I can be walking around, and all you got to do is double tap your ear, and you can answer the phone, and you can be talking like normal, just regular normal. You don't have to yell. You don't have to do anything. The only thing is you do get funny looks because they can't even see any devices in your ears. Because the hearing aids are made to be invisible.
Right. Yeah.
So I guess everybody at work had to kind of get used to that one, but yeah, I thought I'd throw that one at you. And now they got hearing aids that are Bluetooth, and you can't even tell if someone's talking to.
This is a couple, I don't know, year and a half or two ago, but I got into an elevator, and there was a dude in the elevator. And the dude looked up at me and said, "I love you." And I looked at him and I thought, "I love you too." And then I didn't see that he had a Bluetooth in his ear. And then he pointed to his ear, at which point I slumped down into the corner of the elevator. I was so embarrassed. I just wanted to get off the elevator as fast as possible.
Right, I remember when the whole Bluetooth thing came out, I kept looking at everybody like they were crazy.
Yeah.
Why are you talking to yourself?
Right. Thank you, Steve, so much, man. Drive safe. I appreciate you calling. Thank you so much for listening. Tell a friend about the Joe Kelley Show. If you ever miss a minute of the Joe Kelley Show, we do have a podcast. The podcast is growing bigger and bigger every single day, more and more popular, which I'm ecstatic about. You can get it wherever you get your podcasts. Let's see, there's Spotify, there's Apple Podcasts, there's pretty much everything. Any of your kitchen appliances, a lot of the power tools out in the garage these days, you can get the Joe Kelley Show there as well. So check that out. Look for the Joe Kelley Show on Facebook as well and give that a like. You can see the bald eagle video there that I shot with my drone earlier this afternoon. The bald eagle perched majestically up on our tower. You can see that right now on the Joe Kelley Show Facebook page. More of your calls and comments coming up straight ahead. Stay right there.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. Now, the three big things you need to know.
Three. Congratulations to Jessica for winning the WDBO payroll payout of $1,000.
Oh, thank you.
Download the WDBO app now so you don't miss your next chance to get on the payroll payout tomorrow at 8 a.m.
Two.
Members of Congress take over the impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden with speeches after questions for witnesses diminished.
One.
The Senate scrambles to prevent a government shutdown before the end of the month, having already drafted a bipartisan short-term spending plan.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. Connected to our community. Talk local issues and events with Joe Kelley. Use the open mic in the WDBO app and let Joe know what interests you. The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO.
Hi, Joe. My first choice after Donald Trump would be Ron DeSantis, followed by Nikki Haley.
Yep.
Have a nice night.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that. Let's go to Joanna is in Winter Springs. Joanna, you're on the Joe Kelley Show. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
My vote is for DeSantis if Trump doesn't win, if Trump doesn't come up. And I turned off the show last night as soon as Christie called Donald Trump Donald Dump.
You know, that is so interesting. That was, as I said, I tuned in late, and I could only watch a few minutes before my blood started to boil. And I tuned in long enough to hear Chris Christie call him Donald Duck, and I thought, that's it. I mean, that was it for me. I mean, that was so rehearsed. It was so written. It was, I mean, I'm sure Chris Christie stood in front of a mirror and practiced that line, and it was just terrible. But he needs. I get why Chris Christie's in the race. I mean, he really is in the race to be an attack dog against Donald Trump. I don't think Chris Christie has a moment of thought that he's going to get elected, but I think he's there as an attack dog. Joanne, I'm going to let you go because it sounds like you're calling from the moon. I mean,
WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580. Triple Team Traffic.
There are a couple of crashes going on I-4 heading eastbound. It's going to be slow around the 429. Then the Osceola Parkway to Sand Lake past Princeton is where there's one wreck, and busy towards Lee. And then from the rest area to the bridge on I-4 westbound, slow from Saxon to Dirksen where there's another crash. Slow around Lake Mary to the rest area, solid Fairbanks to past the 408, and then busy Lake Buena Vista and Champions Gate. From the WDBO Triple Team Traffic Center, I'm Beverly Bentley Steele.
This is WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580. Orlando's news and talk. Insightful.
You tell the truth from your point of view.
Entertaining.
Man, that guy is a lot taller than he sounds on the radio.
And engaging.
When we hear you on the radio, it's a good thing.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO.
So I've got 17-year-old twin sons, Walker and Texas Ranger, and whenever we go somewhere together, the three of us, if we're indoors, we're like, say we're at a movie theater, we're watching a movie or something like that, then we step outside into the bright sunshine. As soon as we step out into the bright sunshine, Walker, not Texas Ranger as much, but Walker immediately starts sneezing. I mean, he'll sneeze 5 or 6 times as we walk out into the sun. And I'll never forget my ex-mother-in-law, my former mother-in-law. Whenever that would happen, she would say, oh, my gosh, he's allergic to the sun. At which point I would keep my mouth shut. But in my mind, I would think, no, he's not allergic to the sun. That's not a thing. I mean, actually, it can be a thing, but to be allergic to the sun would mean your skin would blister and that kind of stuff. So I saw a story today about why that happens. So I looked it up at the Cleveland Clinic. I mean, so this is a legit thing. This is not just something that's on Reddit or whatever. This was the Cleveland Clinic did a study on this, and it is a thing that is called, and I'm not going to be able to pronounce all these words right. It's a thing that is called autosomal dominant compelling helio-ophthalmic outburst syndrome. Should I try that again? Autosomal dominant compelling helio-ophthalmic outburst syndrome, which, by the way, the acronym, does anybody catch what the acronym is? ACHOO. ACHOO. Well, that's stupid. It's also referred to as photic sneeze reflex. Photic sneeze reflex. So according to a Dr. Lang with the Cleveland Clinic, he says that sneezing is a naso-expulsive response. A sneeze is to the nose what a cough is to the lung. The average sneeze is a response to nasal irritation of some sort, such as an attempt to expel potentially infectious germs. But that is not what's happening with ACHOO syndrome. They refer to these as solar sneezes. Solar sneezes are an exaggerated response that occurs with exposure to bright light. It all starts with crossed wires, he says, involving your trigeminal nerve, a facial nerve that goes to your eyes and your nose. When a bright light hits your eyes, your pupils constrict, and then you sneeze. This reflex usually happens on initial exposure to the sun or a very bright light. You ever you can feel a sneeze coming on? You're like, oh my gosh, I got to sneeze. Hey, hang on. Hey, I got to sneeze. I got to sneeze. And then you look up at the sun or you look for a bright light. You deliberately look for a bright light. That's what it is. That's exactly what it is. And get this. They say that the syndrome is genetic. It doesn't happen to everybody. Not everybody does this, which is why it happens to Walker but not Texas Ranger. Researchers have not yet pinpointed the genetic variation responsible. Also not sure if it's possible to acquire the condition. I hope that they don't spend any more money studying that, because what difference does it really make? I don't know about you, but I enjoy, I think when men get to a certain age, they really start to enjoy sneezing. And I remember my father, my father was very much like me in that he never met a stranger. My father loved to talk to strangers. So do I. And my father loved to be the center of attention, and so do I. And we would be sitting in church as kids, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, my father, and it would just make the loudest sneeze. And we went to Catholic church, and it would always just, everybody in the entire congregation would turn around and look at my dad. And my brother and I would just be absolutely mortified. Like, oh my gosh, Dad, you are killing me. What I wouldn't do to have my father back and his really, really, really loud sneezes. So there you go. I hope I have taught you something. I hope you've learned something on the Joe Kelley Show tonight, that you might have a genetic condition called a chew that triggers a sneeze when you walk outside during the bright, bright light. All right, Powerball. The Powerball is up really high right now, right? So the Powerball is $925 million. Well, somebody did the numbers on this. If you're scrambling to go buy a Powerball ticket for your chance to win $925 million, the odds are very, very long. How long? 292,201,338 to 1. Those are your odds of winning Powerball. You have better odds of being eaten by a shark. Not bitten, not bit by a shark, but eaten. You're more likely to be eaten by a shark than you are to win the Powerball. You are far more likely to get struck by lightning twice than win the Powerball. Not once, twice. You have a better chance of becoming the U.S. president than you do winning Powerball. You have a 32.6 million to 1 chance of becoming president of the United States. How is that possible even? That can't be possible, can it? You have a far better chance of dying in a plane crash than winning the Powerball. You have a far better chance of being hit by debris from a plane than winning the Powerball. You are far more likely to be killed by a bee sting than winning Powerball. Now, remember I said you're more likely to be eaten by a shark than winning Powerball. You are obviously much more likely to be attacked by a shark. That's 5 million to 1 odds of being attacked by a shark, whereas being eaten by a shark, it's 264 million to 1. You have a better chance of being attacked by a grizzly bear than winning the Powerball. You see where this is going? You're more likely to become a movie star than win a Powerball. You're more likely to hit a hole-in-one in golf than win Powerball. Did you know that your odds of getting a hole-in-one in golf are 12,000 to 1? That's not bad. I might need to play golf more often. Or I might need to play golf. I never play golf. You are more likely to win an Oscar than win Powerball. You're more likely to bowl a perfect game. You are more likely to become a millionaire on your own through other means than you are to win the Powerball. You have a 30-1 chance of becoming a millionaire. You are more likely to be injured by a toilet than win Powerball. I don't know how you could be injured by a toilet. I don't want to know how you could be. I don't want anybody to call me and tell me how you can be injured by a toilet. I don't want to hear anybody bring that up again, ever. I don't want to hear a word about getting hurt by a toilet. You're more likely to win an Olympic medal than win the Powerball. So good luck as you're going to go buy those Powerball tickets. I'm sure I did not just discourage anybody. Sweet Ronnie Sue. Ronnie Sue is in the chat. She writes, so I guess you won't be stopping to buy tickets on your way home tonight? No, but I might stop and see if I'm going to get eaten by a shark on the way home tonight. We'll see how that plays out for me. All right, if you're just joining us here on the Joe Kelley Show, a couple of things we're talking about, not the least of which you have no chance of winning the Powerball, 1 in 292 million and change. Oh, and I forgot to tell my wife this, since she is in the chat listening right now. I fell today. I fell in my driveway, and now I can't sue anyone. It was my own asphalt. So... What's that? No. Oh, okay. So we're talking about, if not Donald Trump, if you're not going to vote for Donald Trump, who are you going to vote for? And we're also talking about these terribly, terribly obnoxious people who talk on their phone and speakerphone in public.
So my first choice after Donald Trump would be Ron DeSantis, followed by Nikki Haley. Have a nice night.
Yeah, that's my choice as well. I'm right with you on that one. Absolutely so.
Hey, Joe. People that speak in public on their speakerphone. The other day, I was listening to a woman talking to her bank, and she was giving sensitive information. Anyone with bad intentions could have really picked up on that.
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't understand how someone thinks that's okay to talk on the phone, speakerphone in public.
Presidential picks, number 1, Trump. Number 2, DeSantis. Number 3, it's up for grabs. And then you have number 4, which would be like Chris Christie and Mike Pence.
All right, Chris Christie and Mike Pence there. And I think this open mic here, I think this guy really has a good point.
Joe, nobody likes to watch the debates anymore. They're not entertaining and they're not informative. There's too much bickering, too much yelling, too much talking, too much nonsense, childish nonsense. We really need to get to a long format with a fewer amount of people and allow people to express their goals, their desires, and really get to understand what they're wanting to do and where their mind and heart is at.
I think you're absolutely right about that. And I will tell you that in, several weeks ago, I was critical of Donald Trump for not participating in the debates. And I based upon new information, after watching the last 2 debates, I have changed my mind. Donald Trump was right to not participate in these debates. I have changed my stance on that based upon new information. I don't stick by bad decisions just to be stubborn. If I had a decision that I had weeks ago and there's new information now, I'll change my opinion. I'll change my thoughts on that. And I think you are absolutely spot on. I think these debates are absolute garbage. Garbage. It's terrible. And they serve no purpose whatsoever. No effective purpose whatsoever. 844-580-WDBO. Would you agree? 844-580-9326. Use the open mic and the WDBO app.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. Breaking news to lively debates, covering the issues that matter to you.
I make it a point to listen to Joe Kelley when I need to fully understand what's happening in the news.
Now, The Joe Kelley Show on Orlando's News and Talk, WDBO.
I feel like I was clear about this. I thought I made this clear. That I didn't want to hear any discussion. I didn't want to hear anybody talking about how they got injured by the toilet. All right? I thought I was clear about that, and yet we have someone who wants to tell us about how they got injured by a toilet. If you're just joining us and you're thinking, why are they talking about getting injured by a toilet? We were talking about the Powerball lottery. $925 million is up for grabs in the Powerball. But you are more likely to be injured by a toilet than you are to win the Powerball, and a guy has a toilet injury story, and I feel now I've been goaded into letting you hear this guy's story.
Hey, this is Kevin from Apopka. When I was being potty trained, the toilet at my grandparents' home was a little bit loose, so if you leaned up against it, it would wobble. So when I would pee, I would have to stand on my tippy toes and raise the seat. But one day, I leaned against the toilet too hard, seat fell, smashed me between the seat and the rim. I can still to this day remember.
Right, you remember. We always talk about human memory. You remember the extraordinary, you forget the mundane. And if something and I'm gathering when he says the seat fell, I'm gathering. We all have the same sense, right? We know what part of him was injured. Okay. So, yeah, that would be one of those memorable things that would stay with you for a very, very long time. We've also been talking about these people, these just absolutely delightful people who talk on their phones, speakerphones in public, and particularly in the bathroom.
Hey, Joe. Glad your health is good.
Thank you.
The debate's a total waste of time and money. The Democrats figured that out 2 years ago.
Yeah.
As far as the people who talk on their speakerphone in the bathroom, especially in the stall, they are the people who don't wash their hands. If you're like me, and I know you are, when they leave, you're looking through that little crack in the stall and you're watching them go to they don't even stop at the sink. They go right through the door. Off they go to gross everybody out through their gross day. Really horrible.
Yeah, okay, as long as we're talking about this, you can see the shoes that they're wearing, right? And if I see someone walk out of the bathroom and they don't stop and wash their hands and I see their shoes, I will walk around the radio station until I find someone wearing those shoes, just so I will know, all right, there's someone whose hand I will never shake. There is someone who I will never accept food from that person. Why? Can we not talk about this, for Pete's sake? No more. We're not talking about this anymore. Pick something else to talk about. All right, we're talking about if not Donald Trump, who are you going to vote for?
Me too. Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley. I don't like any of the other jokers, especially Swamagani, whatever. That guy's a little bit too slick. And
Ramaswamy, Vivek Ramaswamy. I will say that, and I mentioned this after the first debate, I mean, he comes off like a used car salesman. I mean, he's trying too hard. He is just overly obnoxious, and it's just too much. Maybe he'll be a good cabinet appointee at some point. But, man, I just cannot see him as the president of the United States. Remember last night how I mentioned that one of my irrational fears is wrongful incarceration? Well, a California man has just today got out of jail. He spent 28 years, nearly 3 decades, for rape, robbery, and kidnapping that the state of California now acknowledges he didn't do. They have DNA evidence that he didn't do it. This dude spent nearly 3 decades behind bars. His story is next.
This is WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's News and Talk. Orange, Seminole, Osceola, and all of Central Florida. Join the conversation now by using the open mic in the WDBO app. Now, the Joe Kelley Show on Orlando's news and talk, WDBO.
All right, they say confession is good for the soul, and I like to confess things here on this radio show. I like to be honest with you guys. We just talked about it the other night about not lying, and so I when I was in college, I was arrested one time. I've been arrested once in my life. I don't know that I've ever said this on the radio before. This might be the very first time I've ever confessed this on the radio. But I was arrested when I was 19 years old. And suffice to say, without getting into the weeds too deep, alcohol was involved, and so was my fraternity. And things got out of hand, and it happened on a Friday. And the judge doesn't come in till Monday. So I spent a weekend in a county jail. And I think that is where I got this fear of wrongful incarceration. I belonged in jail that day and that weekend, but at that moment, I said to myself, I will never, ever, 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 ever put myself in a situation where that can happen again. Ever. And I have never gone back to jail since. That's just, I have lived straight and narrow ever since. And it was just stupid shenanigans, honestly. So I bring this up because of this. There's a California man who spent 28 years in prison. He was freed today. This guy spent nearly 3 decades behind bars. He was convicted of a 1995 rape, robbery, and kidnapping. But now the judge, check that, the district attorney, says, I extend my deepest apologies to Mr. Cabanillas for the miscarriage of justice and the failure of our criminal legal system. So this guy was convicted in 1996, spent 28 years in jail. Now, this is where a lot of people are going to be troubled or confused by this, because he confessed to being one of 2 armed men who approached a couple, forced the man out, drove the woman to an abandoned house where they both raped her. The victim of the attack was told that this guy had confessed, and they later identified him from a photo lineup. But the victim later expressed doubts in court and said that they were pressured into identifying him. And this is where I get really angry, I get really sad, I get really passionate, because there are dirty prosecutors and dirty cops who just want a conviction. They don't care about justice. They don't care about truth. They just want to clear the case and get a conviction. And that's exactly what happened here. That this guy who spent 28 years in prison was told by the prosecution, was told by prosecutors that if he confessed, that he would get off lightly, that it wouldn't be that it would be easier for him if he just confessed to the crime than if it went to trial and he was found guilty. So he confessed. And I know that there are plenty of people who think it's his own damn fault. He shouldn't have confessed. You know what? You're not in an interrogation room for 20 hours straight being interrogated. I mean, it's just like the Central Park 5 or whatever, the Brooklyn 5, I don't remember what they called them, but these poor black kids that were accused of wilding in Central Park, and they confessed because they were pressured to do so. So not only did the state of California, the city of Los Angeles, pressure the victim into identifying the guy that confessed. They pressured the guy to confess. Well, fast forward 28 years later, and we now have the technology to test the DNA. The guy didn't do it. It's not him. It's not him. So not only there are two miscarriages of justice here. One, this guy spent 28 years in jail, in prison, for a crime he wasn't even associated with. He wasn't even there. It's not like he was part of the crime but didn't rape her. It wasn't like he forced the guy out at gunpoint and someone else raped. This guy wasn't even there. That's the first miscarriage of justice. The second miscarriage of justice is a woman was raped and someone out there did it and never went to jail for it. That's now an unsolved crime. The cops were so focused, these dirty cops and dirty prosecutors are so focused on getting their arrest and clearing the case that instead of seeking truth, they just want to clear the case. So a rapist is still on the loose. Now, I don't know if 28 years is a long time. The actual rapist could well be long dead, or frankly, he could be in jail on another crime and another charge. Now, the story from the Associated Press doesn't indicate what kind of justice this man who has been freed from jail will receive with regards to compensation. And it's going to come down to what kind of laws they have in California. Every state has a different law about how they compensate. In some cases, it's $1 million a year. In some cases, in some states, it's like $10,000 a year. I don't know about you, but when it comes to wrongful incarceration, I don't think you can pay him enough money. There is no way to make it right. There is no way to make this man whole. There is no way, after he spent 28 years in prison, to make this man whole and to make it right. But I would say $1 million a year is a good start. What do you think? 844-580-WDBO. It's 844-580-9326. You can use the open mic and the WDBO app. And, of course, check out the Joe Kelley Show podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. Talk and discussion on the latest breaking national news.
Crude oil prices continue to fall.
Local news.
You're not going to have Disney have its own government in Central Florida.
And stories that matter to you. Use the open mic in the WDBO app and let your voice be heard on the Joe Kelley Show.
I can't even imagine 28 years in jail for something I didn't do. God bless this man, and hopefully there's some way to compensate him. How do you, though?
Yeah, I mean, you can't. You can't give someone their life back. I mean, those are 30 years, 28 years. I mean, that is when you have children. That is when you have grandchildren. That is when you see your children get married. I mean, these are pivotal life moments that this guy will never, ever, ever get. And look, I know that most people that are behind bars are guilty. But I always accept the fact that there are innocent people behind bars. Because I don't want to paint with too broad of a brush about dirty cops and dirty prosecutors. There are a handful of dirty cops and dirty prosecutors, and I think cops and prosecutors would agree with me on that. And sometimes they're just in such a hurry to clear their cases, they just want to make an arrest. They want to score an arrest and score a conviction, and they will do whatever it takes. And that's terrible, and that's what happened there. Now, beyond that, I thought I was abundantly clear on this one. I thought I was clear that I did not want to hear any more stories about people getting injured by toilets. So, and for anybody who's just tuning in, I have to explain why this is even being discussed tonight, because the Powerball jackpot is up to $925 million. And somebody did the math and figured all the things that you're more likely to do than to win the Powerball. And one of those is you're more likely to be injured by a toilet than win the Powerball, to which I said, how in the heck do you get injured by a toilet? Well, evidently, a lot of people have been injured by toilets, which I think speaks to the case that you're not going to win the Powerball. You're going to be injured by a toilet.
My brother had the toilet seat fall on him, too. He ran out of the bathroom crying and asked my mom to kiss it.
Oh, gosh. Oh, my gosh. I've won an award for radio excellence. I have won an award for radio excellence. How has it come to this?
So, Joe.
Oh, boy.
I was in a garden center one time, and they had planters made out of all kind of stuff. Bathtubs, old pots, and a toilet. Well, the toilet one was tilted a little bit, and the plant that I wanted was right next to it. So I pick up the plant that I want, and the toilet smashes over on my ankle, and lo and behold, I was injured by a toilet. So there you go.
You know why the toilets are angled at the hardware stores, right? It's so people don't use them at the hardware store. It's so people, oh, for heaven's sake. I'm going to have to give back the award. I know that I am. They're going to come calling and ask for it back. My name is Joe Kelley. Thank you so much for being a part of the Joe Kelley Show tonight. Thank you to everybody in our chat group, our chat room. We love you guys, and are so glad to have you joining us. If you ever get a chance, join the chat group. It's a whole lot of fun on the WDBO Facebook page. Look for the Joe Kelley Show podcast. We're back with you tomorrow afternoon, 5 till 7, right here on WDBO.